Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. It's Monday, January the 9th. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 Twitter handle, as you can see. And I'm joined today, three amigos reassembled once again. And it's joined by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW and Aidan Macdonald at Aidan C. Macdonald on the Twitter handles. Guys, how we doing?
Not bad, Tony, not bad. Yourself?
Yes, good weekend.
Yeah, there might be some banging and clattering behind you because Castle Haggerty's getting an upgrade, is it?
Castle Haggerty's getting another upgrade. Yes, I'm getting a new back garden and new living room flooring and hall flooring laid. So,
nice.
Any banging and clanging, I'll try and mute myself and take it off or get the noise off the screen. So hopefully it won't be too bad. But gentlemen, we'll discuss the Kilmarnock game in full in a minute. Celtic win 2-0 and keep their 9-point lead at the top of the Scottish Premiership. But first and foremost, I'll draw your attention to the strapline running along the bottom. Still got the festive deal going on, and you can get 25% off the yearly subscription rate, which takes that down to £26 by subscribing to the Celtic Way, or you can enjoy 2 months of access to everything on the pod for just £1. And all you have to do is click a button. You know what we always say every day. Click that button, guys. Subscribe. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And in addition to that, I'll just throw this over to Sean. Sean, we have a new sponsor, do we not?
We certainly do, Tony. I'll just flash it up on the screen there. And I've been officially assured by the marketing guys that this is not them trying to tell me something. But yes, the Celtic Way Morning Briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe. SENECA medical specialists perform innovative hair restoration treatments under strict protocols. Their aim is to offer you the final solution for your hair loss problem, and they've treated over 43,000 people so far. You can find out more about SENECA via the link in the description of this video, but very happy to have them. And as I say, been assured by the marketing guys that it is not a hint.
Well, I'm doing okay. My hair's all right for the minute. Aidan, you look okay. I think I get that from my old man. Sean, I'm saying nothing. Plead the fifth on that one. SENECA Medical Group, we thank you for the sponsorship. That's very kind. Cheers, guys. Now, gentlemen, a game of association football took place in Glasgow's East End on Saturday. Celtic 2, Kilmarnock 0. Goals from Jota and a known goal by Ash Taylor, or Kyogo Furuhashi if you're being kind. Kilmarnock made a game of it. The first half, Sean took Celtic until first half injury time to get the breakthroughs from Jota, but what a lovely goal it was too. Great pass from Alexandre Banabe, tremendous centre by Maeda, and Jota making that near post run, getting in front of his marker and scoring. And Celtic scored one just prior to that as well, when Aaron Moy played in Jota, and Jota did, but it's just slightly offside. But I was interested in the fact that since the manager has said guys not making those runs, it's they seem to be making those runs galore, Sean, don't they? And getting a lot of joy from it.
Aye, he obviously identified that as something they were almost slacking in a way. I still don't think it was a Kyogo hint. I think it was more the rest of the team, because he is always buzzing about in there. He's almost always just within the post when there's a ball about the box. But even that, it's if someone else is running into the box, like you've seen it with the goal the other night. Giakoumakis makes a run to the front post, meaning people follow him, and Kyogo can do that thing where he drops back slightly and he's in all the space in the world and can just tap it in there. So yeah, I think he made a point of that. In terms of the Kelly performance overall, of course, 2-0 could have been more comfortable throughout against another team that offered very little in an attacking sense. I think we can all agree. I noted in the data roundup they had fewer passes completed than Aberdeen a few weeks ago, and we knew we thought about that Aberdeen performance a few weeks ago. Only 2 shots. Joe Hart had no saves. I put out on the Twitter, both Carl Starfelt and Alexandre Bernabei completed more passes than the whole Kilmarnock team. Individually, not combined, individually, the two of them completed more than the whole Kilmarnock team. So Aye, in that sense, Kilmarnock offered nothing, but I do think 2-0 was comfortable, but it could have been more if not for the woodwork.
Yes. Aidan, second half. It was a game of two halves, really, wasn't it? Celtic got their noses in front first half, but second half, one-way traffic, and should have been more.
Yeah, there should have been quite a few goals. I do feel sorry for anybody that had 3-0 on their coupon, to be honest, when James Flores missed those at the end. That must have been a sore one. But yeah, the first half wasn't great, but obviously they get the goal through Jota. Then the second half was much improved. I know we're going to come on and talk about individual performances, but I thought particularly a couple of players were really, really good in the second half. So yeah, first half not too good, but second half was definitely an improvement, Tony.
You say that, Tony, about it being a game of two halves. I think Ange Postecoglou got it spot on after the game when he said that the first half was sticky or stodgy or whatever the word it was that he used, and that they weren't doing it in the final third. Because if you read the data roundup that I talked about that I put on the website, you can see from a purely data point of view that although they scored the best chance and created the best chance of the game in the first half, they only took 4 shots in total, and then they came out for the second half and made 21 chances. He called it. I think he called them out on it, and they responded, is what I take from that.
I think he got it bang on totally, and we'll come to his reaction in a minute. But individual performances, Aidan, anyone stick out for you in particular?
Probably the obvious one. I thought Hatate was really good, particularly in the second half. He got man of the match, the sponsors man of the match in the stadium. I think it was well deserved. Also, he was involved in the second goal, getting the assist. Some of his movement and his passing was really good. Sort of helped open up those spaces, which when you're playing a team like Kilmarnock, it's what you have to do to try and sort of move the ball quickly, get it side to side. So yeah, I thought he was probably one of the standouts. I actually thought Kyogo did quite well overall. I know we'll maybe go on to debate whether or not it was his goal for the second one, but I thought he was quite good. They were probably my sort of two standouts in terms of attacking. Defensively, I thought Carter Vickers once again was really, really solid, as he is most games. I know he picked up a slight knock on his face near the end, and that all kind of summed it up. He was just solid the whole time. He had some really, really good tackles, and his passing was excellent. So yeah, overall, that was probably my 3 main players, I would say.
You agree with that? I actually thought that Alistair Johnston did very well too. His home debut, and I thought Maeda and Jota buzzed around with some decent energy and gave Celtic a wee lift when they needed it most. But Carter Vickers in particular, there was one in the first half where he got a rapturous applause. He just took the ball off your man up front, didn't he, Vassal, at one point? It was actually quite funny. Kind of ragdolled them and just went, if you're not going to do anything with it, just give me the ball. And Celtic fans kind of love that about him, don't they? That, but I mean, as you say, we joke about Cameron Carter Vickers 8, but he's
very really not an 8, I know, but
he's a role model of consistency, isn't he? Let's be honest.
Yep, I think apart from the guys, I agree with Aidan about Hatate. I think his movement was superb. That wee shuffle past a defender in a very tight space near the byline that he's doing quite regularly now. That's fast becoming a trademark, like the kind of cross-field pass that he likes to play. But it's five-a-side stuff, to be honest. It's really impressive to see it in a top-flight game. But statistically, the most key passes, even though he doesn't get an official assist because that goes down as an Ash Taylor own goal, that kind of thing. But I thought he did a good game. I think he was deserving of the man of the match. Tony, I agree with you. I thought Maeda just continued that good form. He was direct. He got an assist, but he also absolutely relished that battle with Lewis Mayo, the right back for Killie. The two of them came out as the two players with the most combined tackles and interceptions. Maeda's a winger. Do you know what I mean? Like Maeda's a winger, and on top of that, it was basically a complete performance from him in terms of he was doing that kind of stuff which he always does, but then he was getting forward, beating his man, and he got an assist. So I would pick the two of them out. I agree again, Tony Johnston. I thought he was everywhere. You can tell he's really up for trying to embrace that inverted stuff. I think it will take him a bit of time, and I think that was a test that he's probably not really encountered before in terms of basically a whole 90 minutes spent trying to break down an opponent rather than really having to defend for periods, because he didn't really have to. I do think, as I say, it'll take him a bit of time to get used to the schemes and stuff, because I think he was playing it a bit safe at times, and that meant that Carter Vickers ended up sitting a bit deeper than usual as a result, especially considering the opponents. But I think that's the main ones for me. Besides that, I thought Giakoumakis did well in his half hour.
Yeah.
I've never. I mean, that was almost what 25, 20 odd yarder right in at the top scratcher, if not for the post. I thought it was a save initially, but off the post, and he took the most shots in the game despite only being on for about half an hour. So I think his commitment cannot be questioned in that sense.
Yeah. The manager name checked Maida after actually. He said, doesn't matter how many times
Maida,
he goes down the line, he's going to do it again and again and again. And whether he's successful or not, which I quite like, because it's obviously some guys don't get the credit because they're maybe not as high profile or as prolific as others. But I like the fact that he kind of name check Maida and the fact that he's on a wee bit of a purple patch just now. And yeah, I mean, Giakoumakis did everything but score, didn't he, on Saturday? And you text that to me in the group chat. You said I felt really sorry for Giakoumakis, didn't you? Because as you say, you can't question his commitment there, Aidan. Manager says when players are rotated or they come off the bench, they've got to be ready to do a job. And I think you saw by Giakoumakis' reaction himself that he wanted a goal. Whether or not he wanted a goal, and that was him signing off, we don't know. But there's all sorts of rumours about Urawa Red Diamonds in the J League, Aidan, circulating about Georgios Giakoumakis. And it would be sad to see him go, because I still think he's got a lot to bring to the table, and what will be. But there seems to be all roads pointing in that direction at the minute, doesn't it?
Yeah, in terms of just his performance against Kilmarnock at the weekend, I do agree. You can't question his commitment. He did everything except score. Really, he was everywhere. Had a couple of chances. Obviously, I don't think I've ever seen him strike a ball so sweetly. That one that hit the woodwork, it was excellent. So yeah, in terms of his recent performances, I've not had any issues with him. Obviously, I know we're going to probably go on to speak about his link to the J League. It would be disappointing to see him go. Obviously, this has kind of been a story that hasn't now went away since before the transfer window even opened, going back to the start of last month, before Christmas, etc. I think we've spoken kind of at length. He's been a really important player for Celtic in his time here. When he first came in, obviously didn't feature that much, but then last season when Kyogo was out, particularly that sort of January, April time, he was so important, and his goals were a massive part of the team ultimately winning the league. So it would be disappointing if he was to move on, but there does seem to be some legs in it. Whether or not it's to the J League, I don't know, but the fact that the sort of links don't seem to be going away across several clubs does make me think maybe there is a wee bit more in it than I initially thought.
Sean, are you surprised that it's come to this with Giakoumakis? Are you, because like I actually thought that they would get round the table and thrash out some compromise agreement and everybody, all parties would be happy. But is there more to this that we don't know? Do you think there's more to this, or is it just a question of a man wanting regular first team football and possibly some more money? I'm speculating here.
I don't know. I couldn't possibly comment on if there's anything else. I mean, you said in your piece when you said you were hoping they would get round the table. Ultimately, the only people you'd really need to hear from are either Giakoumakis himself or Ange or Michael Nicholson. Now, Ange Postecoglou was asked about Giakoumakis after the game, and all right, he came out with the line about he doesn't get attached to players because when he was a young manager, his favourite player gets sold 2 games into his tenure and stuff like that, so he doesn't grow to love them, that kind of thing, whatever the phrase was that he said. But on Giakoumakis, he was unequivocal that as it stands, he's basically given him no reason not to have him in the squads and not to put him on, and it's just a shame for him that Kyogo's scoring every week, which means he can't start him. But he did mention that his commitment hasn't been something that he's been led to question. And I mean, when he came on and Saturday, that would back that up.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before that, the only way we'll find out is when the player and the manager speaks, if and when he does decide or choose to leave Aidan. I was reading today, former Celtic player Chris Commons has said, when you leave Celtic, it's there's nothing like Celtic, and we've spoken about this on this pod, and we've said, be careful what you wish for. Even Ange himself has said, good luck trying to find that kind of happiness elsewhere. And it's a big thing to give up if that's what you want to do. I thought Giakoumakis' attitude on Saturday was spot on. it was excellent, and he did make a difference, and he wanted to make a difference, and he was really unlucky. So I'm of the opinion that as long as you're still playing for the club and you're pulling on the Celtic jersey, then give your all. What will be at the end of this window, and I would be really sad to see him go, because I think he still could be a vital player for Celtic. But if he decides he wants to leave, then it's clearly his decision and the board's decision and the manager's decision.
Yeah, if he wants to move on, there's not really a lot the club can do except try and find him a move that involves Celtic getting a good chunk of money out of it. If he is going to leave, then the way he's been going about it in terms of his on the pitch contribution is the way to do it. I think all the games after the winter break that was in place for the World Cup, he's came on. I know I don't think he's scored since football's returned, or domestic football's returned, I should say. But I think in all those games, his commitment's been really good. He's been getting himself about, wanting to make things happen. And if he is going to move on, then the way he's been going about it on the pitch, I don't think anybody can have any complaints and say he's not trying, because he has been involved, and he was very unlucky not to get one, if not two goals at the weekend. So yeah, that's the way to do it. If a player's moving on, make sure you're still putting in 100% effort on the pitch, because that will help you get a better move as well. The club that you're potentially trying to go to, showing you're not throwing the toys out the pram.
Kaiser comes in with that comment, Sean. Do you agree with that, or is that another way of looking at it?
I think that's one way of looking at it. Beach Boys has got the other way of looking at it, which is that maybe he knows he's in the shop window. So I can see why both would think each opinion. All I would say is, objectively, he is obviously trying, and I thought he played well in his half hour. And I do think that Ange Postecoglou, when he mentions Kyogo's scoring form, I think that's just being honest. You can't really drop a striker that is scoring every game he plays. Which, all right, okay, there was a period earlier on the season, a small period, by the way, despite what was being kind of made out in the narrative, where Kyogo was maybe not quite hitting the heights, and that's maybe when you would think, right, Giakoumakis should be in. But ultimately, 16 goals this season. I take it we're not giving him that one Saturday, sorry.
I don't think so, no.
So, and he's scored, what is it, 9 opening goals now, is it, this season? I can't remember. It might not be. Don't quote me on that one. The guy's just playing very consistently well and scoring well consistently. So I think Ange Postecoglou was just being honest when he said that's the reason he's not been getting starts. That may be scant consolation to Giakoumakis, right enough. But in terms of the Urawa Red Diamonds link, did it surprise me? Maybe, but I suppose it almost kind of, there's no reason to think that would be a non-starter, because if we're operating in that market, why would they not be looking at Celtic and going, well, we're operating that market as well? There might be strikers that are maybe not quite getting the game for Celtic that will be able to come and adapt and play in the J1 League, which is a very good league, as we've seen by the quality of player that Celtic have recruited from it. But again, I pointed this out when the Michelin link came up, that although people were kind of disappointed, I think a lot of them, that the reported fee that Celtic are wanting is maybe a wee bit lower than what they thought. I think it was reported that Celtic were wanting between £5 and £6 million for him. That was going to be a transfer record for Michelin, and it would be a transfer record for Urawa Red Diamonds as well. I think the most they've spent is 4.4 million before. And friend of the show, Tony, your man Dana Orlovitz, I noticed that he was tweeting. He's always very knowledgeable about this stuff. He made the point that although he could see it happening from a point of view of Urawa Red Diamonds as a club and Giakoumakis as a player, that kind of thing, they would maybe encounter a problem with their foreign player quota if they did sign him. So there's that to think of as well, and different things. So there's all these things that have got to come together for it, and I just would point out that it would be a record fee for them, which is always worth looking into.
There's some banging. I'm just trying to time my speeches in between the banging there. Now, give me a second. Aidan Giakoumakis, not the only one who has been linked with a move away, and reports are saying that Josip Juranovic is close to a loan deal with a $7 million move to Italian club Monza. That a strange one for you as well? Certainly a strange one for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, or maybe not, well, based off sort of his performances at the World Cup and the links that were coming into place just after that, I think maybe they thought he may be going to a slightly bigger club I know it's obviously going to play in the Italian league, I understand that, but yeah, that and the sort of structure of the deals may be a wee bit of a surprise to me anyway. I know this particular link has been in place for a couple of weeks or so now, or at least a week anyway. It's not just like a fresh one from over the weekend, but the loan move and then 7 million. I think everybody would be hoping Celtic would be able to get a wee bit more money given how much he's got on his contract. The fact that his stock has risen. I think we discussed it briefly off air that it's probably not going to be the massive fee that people were hoping for, but I think everybody would be expecting Celtic to be hoping to get at least 10 million plus for him. And the fact that it's going to be about 7 with him then going on loan for 6 months until the end of the season, that would be a wee bit. I'd be quite disappointed, to be honest, if that's what would happen in terms of the actual deal. I also thought he'd probably want to aim a bit higher in terms of where he was going, but yeah, obviously I know it could be to do with wages and that, etc. as well. But yeah, I'm quite surprised, Tony, and I don't know about you two, but I would be quite disappointed if that was the fee as well.
Tony Max Stark comes in, says 7 million seems way too low, and why would they let him go on loan? It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's an odd way to do it, but it's not unheard of. If it's an obligation to buy, you're getting your 7 million, but it would be in July rather than in January. But and these things are always installments anyway. You'd very rarely ever get the full amount. But it is an odd way to do it. I suppose you could say that's exactly how Celtic got Maeda last January. That was an obligation with a loan in January. So Yokohama F. Marinos knew they were going to get that couple of million or whatever it was come Celtic summer. It's not unheard of. The 7 million fee part, I think, will disappoint a lot of people. It's lower than I says, and I know I was always on the kind of lower end of the spectrum anyway, but it is lower than what I would have expected as well. Again, I want to point out the transfer record. Monza's is about 4 million or so it would be a substantial transfer record for them. That said, and this is, I've seen a lot of people saying they're a smaller Italian club. They are, but they're also backed by Silvio Berlusconi. So they might be sitting 15th in Serie A just now, but their ambitions lie beyond that. So I suppose that's something you take into consideration. But I think, Aidan, to basically reinforce what you were saying there, the World Cup effect, if nothing else, because you all know what I was saying about the kind of checklist, and he's 28. He was going to be 28 at the time. He now is 28. He's all the player he's ever going to be. Nobody's going to be paying for the potential because he's not going to get any better, that kind of thing. But Celtic had the benefit of a longer contract where they could ask for more. The World Cup effect, I thought, might peak that a wee bit. So 7 million is quite disappointing in that sense. If that is indeed what he ends up going for, if he goes. So I agree wholeheartedly with that. But in terms of it, a loan with an obligation to buy, I don't think it makes all that much difference if that's the way they go about it, as long as it's an obligation and not an option, because you don't want him to go and they hold a 7 million option to buy and then he doesn't play that well and then they're never going to exercise it, especially if it's a club record. So it needs to be an obligation, I think, if it's going to be that method.
Lots of banging in the background, that's why I'm not talking, but I agree with that I'll agree with that wholeheartedly, like an obligation, not an option. I'm trying, as I say, not to disrupt the podcast with banging in the background, but yeah, I agree with that. Aidan, do you agree with that? Obligation, not an option?
Yeah, if this is going to be the sort of way the deal's working, you definitely don't want to have an option to buy, because you then basically lose 6 months if he goes there and struggles or gets injured. That's 6 months that you've then lost on trying to sell Juranovic at peak value, which I think we've all kind of agreed. As much as I had also said I didn't want him to leave at times, particularly during the World Cup, if they are going to sell him, in terms of the club bringing in funds that they can hopefully then reinvest to use elsewhere, this is probably the peak time to do it. Maybe between now and the summer, but definitely between those two sort of time frames, the now would probably be the time they would command the most transfer fee. So yeah, I would definitely be hoping that if this is the sort of structure of the deal, it's an obligation to buy, not a option, because you're basically just potentially that's 6 months. You get to the summer, and then if it's an option and he's not done well or he's got injured, then you've lost more time off the deal. So yeah, definitely obligation to buy, Tony, if that's the way the deal's working.
I think that Ibrox performance showed you that you put in an obligation and not an option, because shares can go up as well as down. Players can be hot and cold, can't they? And you've gone from a cracking display against Brazil in the World Cup to the Ibrox performance. So yeah. It's as you say, Sean, these are the things that affect value, isn't it? You
Made
know,
Fasci Sakala look better than Vinicius Junior, I suppose you could argue if you were that way inclined. But no, I think from Celtic's point of view, as the selling club in this situation, you want it as an obligation. You don't want it as an option. Celtic have had the benefit of both in the last maybe couple of years. With Jota, it was an option to buy, but it was at a designated price. So once Jota says he wants to come, you're like, right, no bother, 6.5 or whatever it was. That's a snip. That's fine. That's good for Celtic. With Maida, it was an obligation. You knew what you were paying, and again, the way he ended last season, there's every chance it would ended up higher the way that he played last season if they hadn't agreed it already. With this season, you've got Maurice Jens, which I kind of said at the time when he signed. He never compared himself to Leonardo Bonucci, but he says he liked to model his game on that type of centre-back. And I'd say he'd never really played like that in senior football, so it would be his chance to show that he can do that. The fact that it was an option to buy for Celtic rather than an obligation meant that it was almost a suck it and see. If he does do what he says he can do, then fine, you exercise your option to buy. And if he doesn't, no harm done, he goes back to France. So Celtic can get the benefit of it from both ways, but if it's a selling club situation, you want it as an obligation. You don't want an option at all.
Correct. I would go along with that. Indeed. Now we play the same opponents this weekend, and we'll get into that further down the line and further this week. But I think Ange touched upon that, didn't he? In his reaction, it was strange to play the same opponents, but he came away with that wonderful line, didn't he, Sean? That it was not his desire, it was his. What did he say again?
Talking about the treble and stuff, and he says it's not about my desire; it's about the responsibility.
Responsibility. That's the word he used. Yeah,
and different things.
And I did an opinion piece on that after it, but I actually quite liked that. I thought it was quite a good quote, and also the fact that he was making the point, Aidan, that this Celtic team's might be full of talent, as people say, but it's also full of hard workers. I quite like that too. And he said that, this Celtic team will run about for 100 minutes, and you better be prepared to match that kind of stuff. So, I was quite delighted with that. And whilst I'm not saying Celtic will win the treble, they will give their all in their pursuit of that. That's what I meant, and that's what he was asked. Was his desire to win the treble? He said it's not a desire; it's my responsibility, and that's the unwritten contract. He says it's not in the contract. He said, but they may as well have put the clause in there, which is very good, and it just shows you the thinking of the manager and the players.
Yeah, it sort of sums up the mentality of Ange in the squad since the manager came in summer 2021, since a lot of the players have came in the sort of subsequent transfer windows, and I'm glad that it is a factor, because if you want to try and win even just one trophy, whether it be the league or whatever, never mind a double or even a treble, you need to work hard. So it's a good thing that it's an important factor for the team and the squad. And obviously the manager dealt with that question quite well. He's not just going to come out and say, "Oh, we're going to win the treble" or anything like that, because that would not be something that could age well potentially. So yeah, it's obviously something that all the fans are considering. There's still a long way to go and a lot of football to be played, but I think Celtic are sitting in a good position at the moment that hopefully after the game this weekend coming, I should say, that are maybe one step closer to ticking one of the first boxes of that potential free trophies coming into the season.
Sean, I brought that up because that's the question he was asked.
Say that again.
I only brought that up because that's the question.
Aye, that was the question he was asked. Yep. And I think Aidan's right. His response was probably what you would want his response to be. But I think it will be a different type of game in Saturday. Am I right in saying Kyle Lafferty's back?
He is indeed.
After he's back, what was it again?
10 games done.
Aye, so he always poses a problem for good or ill for his team. Sometimes it's good for them, sometimes it's bad for them. Obviously, we'll be hoping it's bad for Kilmarnock, but I think it will be a different type of game. At the end of the day, there is a difference between going to Parkhead in a league game and going to Hampden in a semi-final. Fans will be more likely to accept you going and trying to shut up shop at Parkhead in a league game, but in a semi-final, there is no draw in a semi-final. You need to win it, even if your plan is to take it to penalties. You need to win it at some point. It's not the same. Then I think they will need to try something a wee bit different. Derek McInnes is all right at Hampden, not against Celtic. But he has got previous in Hampden semi-finals. Usually it's against the other side of the city, right enough, rather than Celtic, which was usually the final that he was getting beat in. But you never know, and I do expect it to be a different type of game. I was just going to put this up for you, Tony. Anthony Aitken says he thought you were disagreeing with me and banging the table. I must say, Tony, there's a fair amount of comments that are listening to the noises coming through your house and are totally willing to believe ill of you. Who's locked in the wardrobe? That kind of thing. Have you kidnapped Juranovic Giakoumakis? John Hill says, has Tony kidnapped the VAR team in the van and they're being concreted under the new kitchen? They're accusing you of all sorts in these comments, Tony.
I just want to clarify, the new kitchen's finished. So I'm now getting a new back
why
garden.
are VAR still kicking about?
A new back garden and a new hall and living room flooring. So that's the stage we're at now. We're doing it in stages, but yes, as Sean said, Castle Haggerty's coming on. There you go.
Well, as 420 said, Tony's getting a new drawbridge installed. That's what you can hear.
I saw that earlier, yes, indeed.
I'm just going to flick this one up as well, Tony. It's just going back to the subject of like loan deals and stuff. And Mark, he says there's always the flip side that somebody goes on loan, plays a blinder, and then they sell them for a huge profit, otherwise known as the Jack Hendry method.
Yes, the Jack Hendry deal, yeah, indeed. Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it, with every player, I guess. You know, that's the risky run. But, you know, we bought Juranovic for what, 2.5?
Mm-hmm. Something
so
like that, yeah.
It's almost treble he's worth for a 28-year-old. Normally you would say that was a good deal, but when you factor in the World Cup and, you know, but I was always, and yourself and myself, Sean, took a wee bit of abuse, but a lot of people disagreed with. We said that it would be kind of low ball figures, wasn't it? We didn't think they would get.
I mean, I still think
5 million.
I still think 7's slightly lower than what I thought, but I did say like 10 to 12.
Yeah,
and all that,
we were saying 10 to 12 would be more realistic. I still think that would be realistic. 7 million just surprises me, and I think it's a low ball offer. But if that's what Celtic are willing to do business at, and that's what's been agreed, then who are we to argue with that? We don't know if that's been agreed, but we're just kind of reading between the lines and certain.
I saw someone saying about West Ham. They were rumoured to be interested, reported to be interested, and I think the comment said that they should pay more, and I agree with that because, as I've said before, if it's an English Premier League team, everyone else is bidding 7, it's 10 for you, like that kind of thing. That's German teams done it for years there, an EPL tax, and I don't see why Celtic wouldn't do the same. And to a degree, Celtic probably have done it slightly, but as always, you kind of get lowballed when it's an England to Scotland to England transfer, I feel.
Aidan, do you feel 10 to 12 million would be more realistic, or even double figure millions in?
To be honest, I think if just based off sort of 7 million, I'd be hoping for at least double that, up to 14. I know I had kind of mentioned briefly, I wasn't quite at the 30 million sort of mark that some people were quoting, but I did hope it would be like neither 20 million anyway after his World Cup performances. But I would like to think that, sort of 12 million plus would be the sort of fee Celtic would be able to command. I think they'd be more within their rights to do that, given the contract situation, given the evidence that it's not just like you're basing these performances off domestically in Scotland, or even, I know he struggled a bit in the Champions League, it's not like you're basing it off of that. There's evidence of the World Cup playing against Brazil, and it was good in other matches as well, we should say, but obviously Brazil was the highlight against one of the favourites for the tournament, up against Vinicius Junior, who was one of the best wingers in the world, somebody who struggled against in the Champions League, but he'd clearly done his homework and improved his game a lot going into the World Cup. So there's a sort of kind of basis of evidence there that he can perform at a good level, and Celtic are in a strong contractual position. This would be the sort of fee that I would potentially be thinking if he'd only had a couple of years, he didn't have that sort of World Cup behind him. But like Sean's saying, if that's sort of the fee Celtic are happy to accept, we don't know that for a fact, but if that is the case, then nothing we can really do. But I would have been hoping for a bit more, to be honest.
Sean, we are shaping up for a busy January, both inwards and ins and outs, you know, so it's ticking over, as they say, isn't it?
Aye, I mean, in terms of more incomings, I think you're probably looking at a striker, especially if Giakoumakis is seriously going to go. You've already got the right back replacement there, you've already got your other midfielder in, you've already got your left centre back in, so I don't really think there'll be that many scout reports, put it that way, throughout the rest of January. But certainly in terms of outgoings, I'd like to see a few. whether it's maybe a loan deal for one or two, or whether it's maybe getting a couple off the books permanently. But the squad is in very good shape when you look at it, especially without a genuine injury crisis. Now, if an injury crisis hits, you never know. But as it stands just now, I think it's probably really just a striker, isn't it?
Yeah. And speaking of incomings, Aidan, I was very impressed with Tomoki Iwata grabbing the mic and speaking in English on Saturday and one of the biggest cheers of the day. That was impressive stuff, wasn't it? And good on him.
Yeah, it was a really nice moment in the stadium when that happened. It was great to see, and yeah, it was probably a bit of a surprise for some people, but no, it was a really nice moment, and it was great to see him just be here, you know, in Scotland. Obviously, the process moved relatively quick. I think it was that might have been less than 2 weeks after, or maybe just over 2 weeks after it was announced that he's sort of over here, and obviously would imagine he'll be straight in and involved in training from today or tomorrow whenever the players are back in for this week. And I'd like to think that maybe obviously the weekend will be too soon. Potentially the St Mirren game might be too soon, but for that Morton game in the Cup, I'd hope that he would be sort of involved, even if it's off the bench. The same with Kobayashi as well. So yeah, it was great to see him over here, because it's not something you want to drag on for a while. Then it becomes, there's not really a game you can sort of play him for a while, because he's sort of trying to get up to speed, whereas he's in now, and that Morton game looks ideal for him to get some minutes. So yeah, it was a really nice moment.
Sean, do you agree? Were you laughing at that? Were you impressed by that?
I liked the confidence. Aidan was there as a punter. Of course, he was off on Saturday, so he went to the game as a punter. And he messaged saying, "Wata's just took the mic. He's just took the mic." And I saw it, and he done well. I thought he did well. You've got to have a certain degree of confidence to swagger into Parkhead and take a microphone and just stand there and say, "This is a great club. Happy to be here," and all that. So, no, I liked it.
Yeah, indeed. And we'll get to see what both he and Kobayashi look like in the flesh in the fullness of time. Looking forward to that, indeed, Sean.
Yes, Kobayashi in particular, just see for the kind of tactical side of it. I want to see what difference it would make having that left footer at left centre back, and if it speeds up the way that they play. To be honest, in domestic football, the amount of teams that sit behind the ball and as I say, with that pass network, it's always just the keeper and then not even necessarily both the centre backs, maybe just one of them in their own half. It mightn't be that you see it maybe the difference until the summer when it's Champions League rolls around again, hopefully. But at that level, that's where you're hoping that would make the difference in terms of speed of getting it out, having that left footer in there. So I'm interested to see that. I'm interested to see them to see Iwata, just to see the way that he's used in relation to maybe Callum McGregor and the other midfielders as well. But tactically, that's the kind of thing I'm kind of looking forward to seeing. There's speaking of tactics, by the way, on the site today, it's in the description. Alan Morrison's done a kind of an exploration into Celtic's wingers. Basically, the title of it is "Why Celtic's Wingers Give Ange Postecoglou an Answer to Every Problem." But he's went through each of the different combinations, each of the wingers, what they bring, and it's kind of the advanced data behind what you probably already be able to see on the pitch in terms of, like, you need a goal, a bada, a defence needs broken down, Haksabanovic, there's space in behind Maeda, a fullback's looking exposed, get Jota up against him, that kind of thing. Even Forrest, like, you need experience to see out a game, all that kind of stuff. But it's the kind of the advanced stats behind that, the rationale behind it, what they're actually bringing in terms of output, and why that is the kind of what the eye test tells you and stuff. So it's really interesting. The link's in the description for you if you want to have a read of it.
Sean, I'll let you wrap up because the change wasn't a background.
That'll be the VAR van getting halved in two. Aidan, anything else to mention before we call it a day? I actually had a comment starred. Actually, sorry, I'll throw this to you, Aidan. Steve McGrory put up. He thought Alexandro Bernabei's passing and crossing was poor initially, but he wants to highlight that his pass to Maeda for the Jota goal was sublime, and after that he felt he was much better and had quite a good game. Where do you stand on Bernabei's performance at the weekend?
That comment probably sums it up quite well. It was quite mixed, wasn't it? He was getting a bit of grief, really, when it was at 0-0, because he wasn't really having to defend that much, but some of his passing and his touches were quite poor. Like, Celtic would have the ball, he would then lose it. He'd then sometimes win it back and then lose it again. And he overhit at least 2 or 3 crosses. But he showed a really good bit of quality for the pass into Maeda, who obviously was kind of involved for the assist for the first goal. It was a bit of a mixed bag. In the second half, he was fine. I mean, he's going to have a lot tougher games defensively than Kilmarnock, even domestically, because he just kind of sat back. I don't really remember him having to defend once in the whole game, to be honest. It was quite mixed overall, Sean, in Burnaby's performance. And I know obviously with Greg Taylor's injury, there's a good chance that Burnaby will be playing in the semi-final at the weekend. Hopefully, he'll be able to work on some of his crossing a bit midweek. But he showed in spells how he can be a good addition to the Celtic team, but still a way to go, I think, in terms of being the final product.
Crossing's always a difficult one because you really need to actually watch the cross, because you can look at the stats and you can say put in 5 crosses and none of them were successful. But see, like for instance, Hatate, when he shuffled at the byline and then he flashed the ball across, I think that was a good ball, but ultimately that will go down as a cross that was inaccurate. Yeah. So it's one of those things. Alexandro Bernabei put in 5 crosses and none of them found the target, but 1 or 2 of them might have been all right balls. So you really need to watch them all. And I do agree that he overhit most of them, right? He did. But I just find that I just wanted to point out that crossing can be a weird one to kind of try and gauge, because often they're not accurate. And even if it is accurate, say somebody got on the end of it, but it wasn't a particularly good ball, but say Giakoumakis just managed to rise and head it wide or something, that's a completed cross. That's 100% cross. Do you know what I mean? But it might not have been a good ball. Might have been the wrong option, that kind of thing. So with crossing, he does need to improve on it. I think his selection choice, Taylor in particular, get a lot better at this with the inverted responsibilities as well, whether it was overlapping or underlapping, because he does still overlap, maybe not quite as much, but he tends to pick a low cross, which I think is a smart option, because most of the time it's Kyogo that's in there. It's not Giakoumakis. We've spoke before about Ralston. He likes the overlap and cross, but a lot of the time when he's playing, Giakoumakis is playing, so it's a decent option. I think there's an argument to be made about intelligent crossing rather than just throwing it in as well.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of times it was a wee bit worried that his cross wasn't going to beat the first man, so that's why he then sort of put his foot right through it. But in the process of doing that, it kind of almost ruined the cross. But look, he's still a young player, and he's somebody else who's not played a lot of football. I know Ange touched on in his presser on Friday that he has actually played a bit more than the sort of coaching staff expected, but overall, because Taylor's been so consistent, particularly for that run when there was European games constantly, you couldn't really take Taylor out of the team because he needed that consistency at left back. So maybe with there not being any European games, and obviously you're after the semi-final, after the recent derby, you're not playing Rangers for a wee while now. And with Taylor's injury, maybe this will be his chance. It can sort of bed his way into the team a wee bit, but I think he's still got a wee bit to go, but he shows in flashes that there's definitely potential there.
Was his 7th start, Tony? And I do think, obviously, conceded that penalty against Hearts that I still don't think was a penalty.
Yeah.
But overall, there's been occasions where you think maybe he could be exposed by teams that want to attack down that flank and stuff, but then that was an argument against Taylor initially as well. And the simple fact is that most teams in Scotland won't, 1, be able to punish you very often, and 2, won't attack that much anyway. Somebody commented there saying, Tony, you got a cow in that house. The cattle closet, they're calling your wardrobe now. But I think Aidan's got a point. He's got, as I say, that was his 7th start. He's got 2 assists. 1 was the match-winning assist against St Johnstone for that Giakoumakis goal. He played all right, doesn't get an assist for this, but that ball through to Maeda for the Jota goal made that goal as well. So there's definite positives there. I don't think there's any kind of reason to write him off, is there yet? Nah, can't do it. He can't do it, Aidan. He can't do it.
I wouldn't say you'd be wanting to write him off. Definitely not.
Nah.
And obviously we're hoping Taylor's injury's not too bad, but at this stage it's sort of probably get more information in this weekend's presser. Obviously I know Ange did touch on and say it's a couple of weeks, but there's been a few players this season. He said a couple of weeks it's been a wee bit longer. The sort of one that's sprung to mind was Stephen Welsh's sort of initial knock. Said only a couple of weeks, and then he was out for a wee bit longer, or he's been out for a bit longer than that, I should say. So hopefully Taylor is all right, but if not, Bernabei then becomes your main left back choice. So we'll need to wait and see.
I'm just laughing because Tony's getting absolute pelters in this chat. Jason Lee says, "Is that Aaron Moo?" in the wardrobe. Kaiser says he's got Chewbacca in the house. Superb. I think we might as well wrap it up, Aidan, unless you've got anything else to add about it.
The only other thing, actually, just when talked about Aaron Moores, he said that I thought Aaron Moy, I thought he did all right at the weekend. I know we mentioned off air that even though the goal ultimately ended up offside, his pass in for Jota for the Kyogo's goal that ultimately didn't count was really, really good. There was, and I thought some of his touches were good. I don't want to go too much into it because I know we'll be doing predicted 11s later in the week, but it will be interesting to see who Ange goes for in the semi-final at the weekend, because obviously up until the recent game against Kilmarnock, I think Matt O'Reilly played 18 games in a row. Then he did struggle a wee bit against Rangers. Aaron Moy came on, did well. Then he did all right the other day, so it will be interesting to see what the manager does there, because it's probably a win-win. Fans can probably make arguments for either side, and I'm sure we'll probably discuss that later in the week.
I think Matt O'Reilly did well when he came on. Unlucky not to get a goal again at the post. I do agree with people when they say that he never really tries to put power on these shots. I have no problem with that, to be honest. If he can place them in, he can place them in. The problem is they're not getting in. That's the problem at the moment. And maybe shot selection is an issue for him. But overall, when you're the league leading assist provider, he's good at set pieces. He brings the off the ball work and stuff. Not getting the goal is almost the least of your worries, but it would be good if he could add that to his game, I suppose. And to be honest, in his scouting report last January, when it was me that done it rather than any of the other boys, and I'm not a scout obviously, so I do it just kind of formulaic. So I'll look at his stats, how it compares with players in his league, but then the players that Celtic have got, but then what they said about him. So it's like rounding up quotes from people that have worked with him, people himself, that kind of thing. But when I looked at the Y-Scout stuff, his shot locations kind of stuck out in terms of he was taking shots from kind of poor quality areas and different things. And his shots on target percentage was worse than Ryan Christie's over the season and stuff. Now, I never did buy that Ryan Christie was quite as bad as what other people said, but he was prone to a balloon over the bar, I think, which kind of took people's eye. So I pointed that out in the scout report, that maybe his shooting might be an issue. I don't think it necessarily was for the first wee while, but now that it's the only kind of hole in his game, it's what people are noticing. And I think it's the only thing he's not doing is scoring.
That's the thing. If he's not going to score in this sort of current run, it's good that he is also putting up the assist numbers. He's still a massive contributor. So if you're not going to find the back of the net, but you're still your goal contribution is still so high, then I don't think we can complain that much.
Going to round off with this from Anthony Aitken, who says Tony's he's just milking it now. No, he's milking it. No. So we will round it off there while Tony gets to grips with whatever is going on in Castle Haggerty. I've put in the link for the New Year subscription offer. As I said at the start of the show, we're now sponsored by SENECA, Europe's #1 hair transplant specialist. And if you want to check I actually thought with the game this week, guys, I thought it was a midweek game, so I'd done the rota wrong and everything. But the next game's on Saturday, so across the week we'll have different things going up, features, analysis, the newsletter, of course. So check out the website when and if you can, and if you subscribe, because I noticed we picked up another few over the weekend. Much appreciated. It goes a long way with us, helps Tony get the drawbridge installed and all that. So thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks, Tony, for your partial contribution. Thanks, Aidan, for yours as always, and cheers for your comments, guys. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Cheers, guys.